deck.
Yeah, Grimsnarl really used to be relying on Arvening for Secret Box, but now with the introduction of Pokepad has been able to shift away from that Arven focus. So while the Secret Box is a little annoying at the top, not going to be able to see it, it is a lot more manageable than it has in the past. And Vance on the other side, prizing one of those Bravery Charms can really make the Monkey Dories a little more healthy against the Frostlass and the Shadow Bullet Snipe. So having one of those prized is a little annoying, as you also want it on the Mega Diancie, but here we go, starting Steven going first, which Grimsnarl usually wants to be going second, get those supporters to get basic Pokemon into play, and just passes.
Oh, just a pass of the turn, so absolutely doing nothing on this first turn. No real pressure being threatened to go with it, and Vance already opens up that Technical Machine Evolution and a Lily's Determination to go along with it. Did, however, start Ralts. It's ideally not the Pokemon you want in that active spot, since that Evolution Technical Machine can only evolve those bench Pokemon.
Yeah, but Steven, with such a weak start, really isn't putting much pressure on that potential one Curly that Vance could get out, so it's not too bad of a spot anyway, as long as Vance is able to find that way to get a second Ralts down and an energy for the active.
We'll see these 8 cards here. There is the Earthen Vessel and an Ultra Ball, it looks like. So with both of those pieces in hand, it does mean that Vance will guaranteed be able to get a Curlia into play this turn. We'll see how he wants to sequence things out. The Monkey Dory as well in the hand. That is a great supporting Pokemon to go into the bench. This Adrenabrain ability, available on both players' sides, will be a huge dynamic in this matchup.
Yeah, one of the big things of this matchup is both players trying to set up as many Monkey Dories as possible, and we kind of get into a Monkey Dory war where both players are throwing damage at each other, and sometimes they just pass to not give the other player damage. Steven has the way to generate on his board with Frostlass and Vance with Psychic Embrace, so they're both able to make some damage to make plays with Screamtail, Shadow Bullet, whatever their deck has available.
Vance will have the opportunity to first look through his deck, see what pieces are available. We'll note that the Mew EX is in the prize cards, as well as that Bravery Charm, like you mentioned, and did get rid of Arven, with that other one being at the top of the prize card. So no Arven, most likely, for Vance in this game. We'll have to really rely off of those other supporters in order to draw some cards this game.
Yeah, the Arvens are kind of weak in the mid game. They're really good in the early game to get Secret Box, to get a bunch of basics and the Technical Machine Evolution, and then the late game to find those Bravery Charms and Night Stretchers, whatever piece you need to close out the game. So I don't think Vance will be missing it too much, relying on Pheasantipity to kind of compensate for the draw that Guardy doesn't have refinement anymore. So just kind of working off that lack of draw.
Will be that Ralts grabbed, Psychic Energy in the hand to the active spot, and we'll see that Technical Machine Evolution do its work to allow Curlia to evolve on the first turn of the game. This action is back onto Steven now. Steven doesn't know that this Secret Box is prized and is considering using Arven, which would be pretty weak in this spot without it. And this is a big risk here. Arven's not going to be able to find Secret Box, and Steven's going to have to completely pivot how he wants to play this turn.
Yeah, Steven had almost every supporter available. I saw Lilies and Iono and an Arven, and going with this Arven, no Secret Box means gonna have to find something else to do this turn. It is that risk of relying so heavily on that ace spec is 1 in every 10 or so games. It's gonna be prized, and there you see it on his face.
You see him shaking his head. You know, sometimes poker face is important in the TCG, but it's pretty clear what Steven wanted to go for here. The Secret Box could have even found a Grimsnarl KO on this first turn. The Spikemouth Stadium, Rare Candy, a supporter for next turn, but instead is gonna have to go to the drawing board and think about how he wants to re-pivot this turn. Maybe something along the lines of a pivot out. We'll see the Air Balloon and that Buddy Poffin grabbed, and it is going to be Itchy Pollen. But ooh, an interesting card to play down in this matchup. That 30 HP can be a big weak point of this card.
Yeah, the idea of the Budu in this matchup is it's very hard for Gardevoir to set up a bunch of Monkey Dories and a Gardevoir EX under the item lock. They kind of have to get one, but since Vance already used the Technical Machine Evolution, it is a bit more likely to get multiple Monkey Dories and the Gardevoir in play. But Steven here is just trying to slow down the game a bit and establish his board, since he had such a weak turn one just going draw pass, and now with no Secret Box is just Arvening for this Poffin. Has the Morgrim at least, so is threatening a Grimsnarl attack next turn if Vance gets aggressive and takes KO. Activating Countercatcher, which is something to watch out for in this matchup.
Vance only has 1 Psychic Energy in the discard pile as things are shaping out. So we'll see the Itchy Pollen, 10 damage onto Ralts, and right away, Vance, with the Dark Energy, even going to evolve this Curlia up into the active spot and play that Iono. So Vance puts that Turo to the bottom of the deck. We'll see these players draw 6 cards from the top. Can Vance find that Gardevoir EX? If he can, he could take 2 prize cards this turn. Oh, Gardevoir does have an Artisan and another Dark Energy for next turn. So the question now becomes for Vance, do you want to use this Call Sign attack? It feels like that may just be the best way to go about this turn.
Yeah, Call Sign can get you the Gardevoir EX for next turn. Maybe something like the Frillish if Steven continues using Itchy Pollen can kind of win the item lock war without giving Steven the Artisan in play to get his own Monkey Dories, and Vance could get that second Monkey Dory that we were just mentioning as well with the Dark Energy in hand ready to go for next turn.
Yeah, and this will take more damage next turn from Itchy Pollen if it does, take another hit, which is just more damage Monkey Dory can throw back at the opponent. So we'll see this Screamtail along with the Gardevoir EX be grabbed. And while another Gardevoir EX is probably what Vance wants in this spot, you do have to always try and be careful about Iono as a way to support, a little bit of disruption on Steven's side.
Yeah, and with Steven having an easy way to knock out these Gardevoir EXs, it is important to not always immediately go into the second one. Now that the Curly has 100 HP, they're a lot tankier and resistant to the Shadow Bullet 30 snipe, so kind of staggering that board can really limit Steven's ability to take prizes aggressively.
Pheasantipity EX, the third Pokemon to be found off of Call Sign. Like you said, big upgrade in small ways sometimes for this Gardevoir deck.
Yeah, and Vance here kind of shows to Steven that his hand isn't amazing if he's grabbing this Pheasantipity. Grabbing this instead of one of those other more impactful Pokemon means there's either no supporter or he's expecting Steven to take a KO. So maybe Steven now sees that and just plays a bit more patiently, uses another Itchy Pollen, sets up the board, and here with the Pokepad, a great addition for Grimsnarl. Lots of lists playing 3 or 4 of them now. Just gets your Monkey Dories, your Frostlasses, your Morgrims. Really just something that Grimsnarl felt to be missing, being super reliant on the Technical Machine evolution in the past.
As you mentioned, Monkey Dory grabbed Spike Myth Gym. Coming down into play, will search out this Grimsnarl EX if Steven so chooses to, but is just going to continue to play things slow, like you mentioned. Does have Grimsnarl EX in hand, so we'll have the choice now to use that Punk Up ability, see how many Dark Energy want to be searched out of the deck. It is just going to be the 2 onto the Grimsnarl, and considering putting a third onto Morgrim, but just going to go ahead and go with just those 2 for the time being.
Yeah, Steven does have that second Grimsnarl prize, so it wouldn't have been surprising to see one go on the Morgrim, but just here, only getting 2 Dark Energies out of the deck because you want to be able to attack with Shadow Bullet, but you also don't want to limit your odds of finding a Dark Energy for your Monkey Dories. So by limiting that, I mean, you can evolve the Morgrim into another Grimsnarl and accelerate later, and you have basically unlimited acceleration with 5 energies off it. Just trying to get those Monkey Dories. I mean, Vance already has one, threatening getting a second one next turn. Steven's already behind in the Monkey Dory war, so just trying to get them as online as possible and quickly.
No Dark Energy in this hand. It does sort of make me wonder, if Steven could have waited to use that Spike Myth Gym, played the Lily first and kept those Dark Energy in the deck, but it can be hard in hindsight to, think about plays like that. Steven's going to have to do what he can, but with no Dark Energy on Monkey Dory and with item cards going to be available for Vance this next turn, there could be a huge tempo swing this turn.
Yeah, I mean, if Vance gets another Monkey Dory and maybe an attack with the Mega Diancie, could put a lot of damage onto this Grimsnarl, and Steven's not going to be able to reduce that damage as much as he'd like with only threatening 1 Monkey Dory on the next turn.
So there it is, Shadow Bullet KOing Curlia. 30 damage placed onto Monkey Dory. Now the options kind of become a bit overwhelming here for Vance. Could start to go after Monkey Dories of his own. Top deck's Earthen Vessel for the turn. So now there's a way to, at minimum, put one of these Psychic Energy in the discard pile. But like you mentioned, grabbing that Pheasantipity the turn before, there's really not too much else going on. Does have Gardevoir EX, does have Monkey Dory Dark, but what will the attack of choice be? We're going to have to see.
Yeah, I mean, Steven not having any Dark Energies on these Monkey Dories, a Screamtail isn't too strong, maybe only knocking out that Morgrim. So could see something like the Mind Bend try to disrupt this Marnie's Grimsnarl, but it already has the Air Balloon, so you're not threatening those energies much. Maybe the Mega Diancie attack just put 240 to 300 damage, depending on how many Monkey Dories Vance is able to set up, and just pressure this Grimsnarl to be knocked out on the next turn with a couple more Adrenabrains.
See if the Pheasantipity does come down. It does. Flip the script, drawing 3 cards. We'll see how much help this can give to Vance's turn to start things off. Does find 3 supporter cards. The Iono, Lily's Determination, would still draw 8 cards for Vance. So you've got to imagine that's probably what he would like to do at this spot.
Yeah, especially being down in Iono already, you really want to keep those for the later game, as Grimsnarl with no draw engine on board can be really prone to those late game disruptions. So trying to keep as many Ionos in the deck is really strong for these Gardevoir decks, especially in these harder matchups due to the weakness.
See the Screamtail come down. If there is a Dark Energy in hand, sure, we'll see Artisan be used. Grab that second Monkey Dory to put an energy on it. There's now 3 Psychic Energy in the discard pile, so it's pretty much the magic number here for Gardevoir. EX can now start to, navigate around however he so chooses to. And with this Monkey Dory down, there would be another bench space open for that Diancie, but with Screamtail also coming down, it may signal potentially getting aggressive and even maybe going after that Morgrim on the bench. That could be a really strong play here.
Yeah, I think that's what Vance is angling here, and also just kind of hedging for not drawing it out to Diancie off this Lilies. That's one of the things with Gardevoir. You don't always draw everything you want. Obviously, when you do, the deck feels amazing, but since you don't always do that, you kind of have to be ready for having backup plays that may feel a little weaker or not be what you want to do, but you have them guaranteed.
Will be the Lily's Determination, saving that Bravery Charm of note. The other one is in the prize cards. So now we'll have to think about, if Vance does find Diancie here, what is the best play? You've always got to be thinking about, in spots like this, Piper, what is the route if your opponent just goes boss's orders and KOs your Gardevoir EX when you have no Ralts down?
Yeah, and Vance may be looking for a second Ralts. Saw him eyeing up that Bravery Charm on the Screamtail to protect it, but without doing that, maybe only going to be putting 40 damage, just leaving the Screamtail so it's out of range of the Shadow Bullet Snipe and not having damage on Steven's board to knock it out. Means that you can bench a Ralts on the next turn and use another Screamtail attack, kind of progressing your board still, even if Steven is able to find the boss.
And Lily's Clefairy is another really interesting card in this matchup since it's not Dark Weak. This is going to decide to discard it off of Ultra Ball.
Yeah, you kind of need to pair it with the Bravery Charm, since it's only at 190 HP, which means even if you heal it all the way, if Steven just has a Dark Energy on one of the Monkey Dories, Adrenabrain means it's getting knocked out, and 2 more prizes, but here Vance getting that Ralts. So going in with the Screamtail for sure this turn, and just kind of making sure that he has a threat of a Gardevoir on the next turn, even if Steven has that boss knockout.
Curious where we'll see these Adrenabrains go. We'll have to see one go on to that Morgrim to take a KO onto it. The other question is, do you even want to leave damage on your opponent's board? Do you go after Badoo to take a KO on that? We'll see what the choice here is for Vance. Again, one essentially guaranteed, smartly moving it off the Monkey Dory. We'll go into the Morgrim. Where is this other damage going to go? It feels like you could just abstain from using that and just have it available next turn, but you should probably have more than enough damage. Yeah, we're just going to save the other Adrenabrain, take a KO with Roaring Scream onto Morgrim, and now all of a sudden for Steven, he's got to find a way to at least threaten putting another Grimsnarl into play on the following turn.
If Vance had gone with the second Adrenabrain to knock out something at the Badoo, it would have also given Steven something like Countercatcher, which means Arven also gets Steven the Gust card to knock out that Gardevoir. And the Badoo is kind of just sitting on Steven's board now and not really threatening at all. And Steven with the third Impidimp and second Grimsnarl prize is really being pressured on his Pokemon here. Usually Gardevoir tries to pressure the energies, but Steven not fighting energies on those Monkey Dories is more so pressured on his attackers this game. So we'll see what he's able to put together this turn. Is going to need something like a Night Stretcher or a Super Rod. Only playing Night Stretchers in the list, so looking for the Night Stretcher to get that Impidimp back, and then may need another one on the next turn to replace this Grimsnarl if it gets knocked out.
Of note, the Secret Box and the prize cards, we talked about that, but there is also a 101 line of that Grimsnarl, including that Impidimp in the prizes, so going to have to burn Night Stretcher, and also a Night Stretcher as well in the prizes for Steven. Absolutely brutal here so far. Is really going to keep him on the back foot when it comes to stringing together these Grimsnarl EXs. Yeah,
and using an Iono here, not a boss's orders, means Vance doesn't have to find Rare Candy and Gardevoir on the next turn. Already has the Gardevoir set up, and that really just opens the lines for him. Already having the Gardevoir, having the Pheasantipity to draw 3 cards, because Steven can't let this Screamtail just stay in the active. Has to take the knockout this turn, it feels.
Does at least get the Dark Energy onto Monkey Dory. So will threaten Adrenabrain on the following turn. There is no damage counters to move so far. Will be this Shadow Bullet. Now 30 damage could go on a Pokemon. It will most likely just be moved off thanks to Monkey Dory. Question is, do you start to pile it up on Gardevoir EX to threaten Devo? That doesn't sound terrible.
Yeah, and that's kind of where you could be asking, should Vance have used that second Adrenabrain just to heal the Gardevoir and put it onto that Morgrim last turn, so that Steven wouldn't have this option of a late-game Devo on the Gardevoir, but just setting up that Pheasantipity for a Shadow Bullet later, if it doesn't get healed or Bravery Charmed.
And now Vance is kind of thinking about where to put these counters. You will have to, of course, retreat a Pokemon. There is 2 retreat on that Gardevoir EX, so it will be bumped up to 80. You can still comfortably move 6 of those counters off, depending on what you want to go in with this turn. There's an Ultra Ball available. Now, because of the bench space here, Vance will not be able to take a KO onto this Grimsnarl, but could still pressure it pretty heavily here with that Mega Diancie. 240 damage plus the 60 from Adrenabrain would leave Grimsnarl with just 20 HP remaining. Issue, though, is that if Steven can just establish another Grimsnarl, or excuse me, another Monkey Dory, you're in a weird spot where you're not going to be able to KO it with Adrenabrain into the next turn. So with that being said, how does Vance want to approach this turn?
Yeah, the nice thing about the DNC is that Vance is putting Steven on finding a boss, but also eyeing up a Monkey Dory, although has the Artisan in play to get that anyway. So it feels like the Ultra Ball was intended for the DNC, but now Vance reconsidering. Yeah, grabs that Monkey Dory, maybe going for a third Monkey Dory and just maybe using something like Miracle Force this turn or a Mind Bend.
Yeah,
to just
Mind
try to
Bend.
slow Steven down.
Mind Bend would force Steven to have Rare Candy plus Grimsnarl in a 5 or so card hand. And even if it's there, you're still putting pressure onto the board. You still get your Monkey Dory damages. Instead, though, are we going to see Mind Bend go aggressive potentially here? Monkey Dory on Monkey Dory crimes, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, knocking out Steven's Monkey Dories means if damage ever sticks on his board, he's not going to be able to heal it. Iono continuously pressuring Steven's hand size and making it so that he's not able to find these combos as easily.
Yeah, and rips the Dark Energy as well, the last one at that. Off of these 3 cards, even finds a Super Rod for the following turn.
Yeah, Vance could potentially Miracle Force here and load a bunch of damage onto the Grimsnarl, but then you're going to have to find Rare Candy and Gardevoir on the next turn, which is a little scary to do.
Yeah, regardless, you are threatened by a boss's orders on the following turn. We'll have to see if Vance wants to play this out. We'll see the retreat into Monkey Dory.
Also, though, with Steven having that air balloon committed, could maybe just Mind Bend this Monkey Dory to put damage on it, not even knocking it out, and forcing that retreat to have 1 less energy on Steven's board while loading up damage onto the Grimsnarl. But I'm assuming we're going to see a knockout here.
I'm curious if we'll see that other Monkey Dory come down into play, or excuse me, the Dark Energy be played down. It looks like no. So we'll see healing off of the Pheasantipity onto the active. And then the second Adrenabrain probably off of the Gardevoir EX just to keep that out of range. Keep some damage on the board in case this Gardevoir does go down. It will be the case. We'll see Mind Bend get in there, take the KO. Vance will tie things up at 4 prize cards. And now a big opportunity here for Steven if he can find a way to KO this Gardevoir EX.
Yeah, still just having to draw one of those boss's orders. That's one of the downsides of Grimsnarl. No engine. You're really reliant on these boss's orders in the matchups, but you can't find them easily. You have the secret box usually, but Steven still has it at the top of his prize cards. And top decks the boss's orders.
Wow, boss's order is a huge find. Even has Dark Energy for Monkey Dory as well. Got to imagine that's probably Steven's best play. It would leave Vance with a pretty large hand size, but do remember on that first turn of the game, did play Ultra Ball and discarded a Rare Candy. So if Steven is kind of up to date with how these lists are built, which he should be since he actively plays Gardevoir, he'll know that there's probably only 1 more Rare Candy left in this deck, meaning that if that card is prized or is unable to be found, it will be a huge tempo swing for him in this game.
Yeah, and Vance does have the threat of triple Monkey Dory plus Mega DNC to knock out the Grimsnarl, but that is just a lot, like you've been saying, to find. And Steven here, with the boss's orders, going down to 2 prizes, potentially threatening game in a couple of turns.
Yeah, with another Monkey Dory, it would have essentially threatened it potentially on the following turn. You can put that damage onto Ralston. If it's not evolved into a Kirlia, it would just be game over on the following. We'll have to see how Steven wants to play this out. Checking the resources. We'll take note that that Rare Candy is discarded. Just has to feel stronger than playing a Lily this turn and cycling through. So there it is. Boss's orders onto Gardevoir. We'll have to place 3 damage counters onto the board with that Shadow Bullet damage. Let's see where this chooses to go. It is essentially not super relevant. We'll still stack on the Monkey Dory. Gardevoir EX goes down, and here we go. Big turn here for Vance. Can he find the Rare Candy Gardevoir plus a way to get Diancie into play? We already see the Dark Energy and has the Secret Box in hand. If Vance still has an Ultra Ball left, that would guarantee all the pieces right there. There's 2 energy in the discard pile.
Yeah, the Secret Box here unlocks the combo, really. You can get the Rare Candy and Iono. So just either need a way to find that Gardevoir with Night Stretcher or already have that Rare Candy.
I think it's already in the hand, Piper. Yes, already has it in the hand. It already has Nest Ball as well. He's going to use Artisan first just to check the deck, see what pieces are available. That Rare Candy is in there, and there are Psychic Energies too. And with Vance taking this KO here, he would essentially lock up the game on the following turn because that Budu is still in play. Now, Steven wouldn't be completely out of the game. There would still be a combo for him to win the game, but it would be highly unlikely.
Yeah, really hard, especially because of that Secret Box hitting Vance and Iono on top of all these plays. going to put Steven to 2 cards, and with only an Impidimp in play, really just shows the power of Secret Box as an ace spec, and Steven notably missing it this game. Could have been in a completely different position with that Arven on his second turn, getting a Secret Box and really developing the board.
Vance is just going to thin everything out of the deck, not even using Flip the Script quite yet, just grabbing all of those pieces, can save the Super Rod for later. There it is, slams it down. Rare Candy Gardevoir, the Dark Energy already in hand, and the Nest Ball can find the key piece in this match. Mega Diancie shining bright as it hits the battlefield and will threaten a Garland Ray KO on this turn onto the Dark Grimsnarl.
Yeah, and Vance going to have 3 Monkey Dories at the end of this turn. I feel like I've never seen Gardevoir lose if it ever sets up 3 Monkey Dories. It's just so powerful. Monkey Dory is such a fantastic card, and we see both players using it to its fullest potential. Steven with 4 in his deck, and Vance with 3. This Mega Diancie also putting out a lot of damage for a basic Pokemon. And here Vance uses the Bravery Charm on the Pheasantipity, just trying to be played a little safe in case Steven has something like that Blood Moon or Saluna that a lot of lists are playing, so that he can't draw the perfect 3 cards of Boss's Orders, Blood Moon, and Energy to attack and win the game.
Yeah, it's just thinking about bringing back Screamtail to essentially guarantee it as a out here. Does have the Dark Energy, does still need to put that onto the Monkey Dory. Can, of course, retreat one of those Psychic Energies off. So there it is. Super Rod shuffling the Screamtail back in. See the Dark Energy be played onto Monkey Dory, and that Iono will take the KO. Or excuse me, will hand disrupt here. So here it is. Dark Energy down, Iono hand disruption, and with the help of Secret Box here, Vance has essentially put together the perfect turn to try and close out this game in the near future.
Yeah, Vance has just been playing patiently, taking key knockouts while not putting extra damage on Steven's board, and it's finally all coming together. 3 Monkey Dories have been set up over this game, and now he's going to be able to take this big knockout on the Grimsnarl, leaving Steven with a Monkey Dory and a Dark Energy and an Impidimp, but a lot of these Grimsnarl lists only with 1 candy, and Steven already down a Night Stretcher. Did find the second Grimsnarl off the prizes, but now it's at the bottom of the deck. So it's going to be really hard for Steven to put together anything to respond to this Mega Diancie. And Vance here just showing how Gardevoir rewards patience with amazing boards like Triple Monkey Dory.
Patience is a virtue, Piper. We're seeing that on full display. 2 energy will go onto this Mega Diancie just to make sure there's still energy in the discard pile to move for next turn. And Garland Ray, thanks to that Monkey Dory being able to move 6 off of itself and then 3 onto the active from that third Adrenabrain. 240 damage plus the 90, 330. Grimsnarl will fall, and Steven will be put in an absolutely brutal spot. 2 cards, and I'm not even sure there's a combination of 3 cards here that would win Steven the game. It'd have to be Rare Candy Grimsnarl Boss, and we still know that the Grimsnarl's not in the prizes, but that Secret Box being in the prizes is such a big deal. Here we go, Piper. Big 3 cards, and there's absolutely nothing. Just a Night Stretcher in hand, and that will basically lock the game up here for Vance.
Yeah, I mean, even has a Bravery Charm, but Vance with 3 Monkey Dories. The Bravery Charm is not doing anything here. Vance should just be able to close it out on the next turn. Steven considering with this Night Stretcher if there's anything left that he can do, but it's not looking like there's much with this board.
It can just retreat once off the Diancie and then 3 onto the Gardevoir EX. Chipollen will have no effect here. It's going to just play it out for the fun of it, essentially, at this point. Itchy Pollen does no damage because of that Diancie's Diamond Coat ability, but yeah, Vance has essentially everything locked up here.
Yep.
Psychic Embrace #1, just going to check the energy. We'll see that there is more than enough. Can just go ahead, use those Psychic Embrace abilities, put that Diancie up to 9 damage counters, and after a back and forth, Vance Kelly closes out game #1.
Yeah, really showing the strength of Pheasantipity. I mean, both these decks don't have a real draw engine, but Vance with the Pheasantipity is able to keep drawing cards while taking these prize cards, whereas Steven eventually fell to the Iono to 2, and the board just being a little too weak, Vance was able to take this game that, yeah, like you said, was really back and forth.
Now, Steven here will have the option to go second. She will take that opportunity. First game, though, it seemed like that big turn was early on in the game where Steven played that Arven, looked through the deck, was hoping to find that pink card, and it just wasn't there, and it kind of just set us into a bit of a, awkward position where Badu had to be used early, and it really just didn't provide the disruptive effect I think that Steven was hoping for in that first game.
Yeah, especially when your opponent gets to Technical Machine Evolution before you Itchy Pollen, it's really hard for it to get value, and here we kind of see those prize trades back and forth, but Vance never giving Steven Countercatcher, forcing him to use Boss and kind of keeping that board weak, gets to a point where There was just that Impidimp left after this Grimsnarl got KO'd from that perfect turn from Vance's Secret Box. Really just showing the power of that ace spec.
Yeah, triple Monkey Dory showing the power of that too. The Monkey Dory war very clearly in Vance's favor, even as far back to, Steven not being able to establish Monkey Dories, but it never mattered because outside of that turn, there was no turn where Vance left any damage counters on the board for Steven to move. A huge factor in just making sure your Monkey Dories get value while your opponents don't.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things. It's like, should Steven be setting up the Frostlass to give himself damage? But if we see a similar game where Vance just has more Monkey Dories than him, it's going to be a bit disadvantageous to have that extra damage on your board. But here, starting the Snow Run is going to have it as an option. Snow Run now with 70 HP can't get picked off as easily. And Vance just starting with an S-Ball. Going to search the deck and probably get a Ralts here.
Yeah, we'll see the prize cards, what cards are available for both of these players. Vance does have that Curly on the prizes. We saw how that was, a relevant piece to make sure Technical Machine Evolution could grab it, so that will be unavailable for the time being. Monkey Dory in the prize cards as well. We saw how having all three of those were important. It is towards the bottom, which means there is a high chance Vance does take that early on. A couple supporters, but nothing too relevant.
Yeah, a lot of supporters could be important if Steven goes for the Itchy Pollen strategy again. Just make it hard to find the Pokemon that you need to set up and threaten a bunch of Monkey Dories again, or threaten a Gardevoir and find all those pieces.
Let's have an Ultra Ball in hand. You see him really thinking about whether or not he wants to play this card. There's a high chance of item lock potentially happening, but so really thinking about it, but it's just going to pass the turn over. Steven will get started. Does have 3 Iono in the hand, as well as a Dark Energy. We'll just put that onto the Snow Run to threaten pivot into at least something else. And there it is, Iono being played, hands being shuffled, put to the bottom of the deck. 6 additional cards being drawn for both these players, and Steven does find a pretty solid set of 6 cards here, Piper. Badoo, Monkey Dory, and a Stadium, as well as an Impidimp to go along.
Yeah, a lot of great cards. Can get 2 Impidimps, which Steven prioritized pretty heavily late last game. So can get the 2 Impidimps, has a Night Stretcher to get this Dark Energy back on Monkey Dory next turn, and this Itchy Pollen to just slow Vance down a bit. And yeah, aggressively benches that Monkey Dory. Not really a downside to it here. And considering Spike Smithing, I think with Vance only having the 2 Artisans, Grimsnarl is typically pretty favored to win the Stadium War. And getting the second Impidimp means you can get 2 more Grims and then 2 Grimsnarls eventually. But with 1 more Grim prize, that could be a little awkward. And 2 Dark Energies. Last game, we saw Steven struggling to get Dark Energies on the Monkey Dories, and with 2 prize, could happen again. That Air Balloon 2, while it's at the bottom, it is a really important piece for mobility, especially when your Gardevoir opponent uses Mind Bend or Counter Catcher to try to force retreats and discard energies and prevent you from setting up those Monkey Dories.
So there it is, Itchy Pollen, everyone's favorite little guy getting in there. So Ralts number 2 does come down into the bench. There is the Technical Machine Evolution, so who needs Arvin, Piper, when Vance just has it essentially every turn he needs it so far this set?
Well, Vance still does need to find that Psychic Energy or Dark Energy and can't use Earthen Vessel or Secret Box. I saw Secret Box before the Lilies, but with Itchy Pollen, can't use that, and just needs to draw one of those energies. I mean, Gardevoir, 10 to 11 basic energies. You think you'd find it, but sometimes you just don't, especially off of 8 cards. It feels pretty bad, but it happens.
This is the Pokemon TCG. Anything can happen. We'll see these 8 cards be drawn. Of course, a reminder that currently in the prizes means only one of these Ralts can be evolved up, and right in the window there, Psychic Energy found here for Vance. So at least breathing a sigh of relief. Does have Gardevoir EX as well for the following turn. We'll see the Technical Machine Evolution just get 1 Curly into play, but it is the bare minimum Vance needed to find on this turn.
Yeah, especially because Steven, a lot of Grimsnarlists only playing 1 Rare Candy. It's so hard for them to go Rare Candy and Boss on the next turn. They kind of just need to draw their Secret Box. And yeah, Steven just slamming the Lily's Determination, getting a new hand. Not using that Night Stretcher to get a Dark Energy early, though. Just hoping to find it off this Lily's. We'll see if he is able to.
Yeah, we saw Monkey Dory again not be as impactful on Steven's side. It is, of course, important to threaten it in the following turns, but maybe just really wants to prioritize having that available. The Morgrim is prized. May want to have another Night Stretcher available for that piece. So, it is a bit of an interesting predicament on whether or not you want to use that. You haven't used any punk ups yet, so it may just be better to save that card for later on. But that's all hindsight once we see what these 8 cards are going to look like. He knew he was going to draw into a Dark Energy, you see?
There is one there.
Yeah.
And finds the Rare Candy. Could get aggressive if he wants to this turn. I mean, from Vance's perspective, a Monkey Dory getting knocked out with 1 in the prizes is actually pretty annoying, but obviously Steven doesn't know that.
Yeah,
so we'll see what he goes with.
If there's a Boss's Orders in hand, it probably would just be better to use that Badoo's Itchy Pollen again, but I'm not sure I see a Boss quite there. We'll start with the Pokepad, grab out Morgrem plus a friend. Yet again, foregoing evolving into Frostlass in this matchup, just really wants to make sure that Monkey Dory is only going to get value when Vance puts counters and not thanks to that Frostlass's Freezing Shroud ability.
Yeah, and grabbing this Grimsnarl could be getting it for next turn or going with the Rare Candy this turn. And yep, there's the Rare Candy to punk up.
All right, so we are getting in aggressive, Piper. Using this punk up ability, accelerating energies into play. Now the question is this just essentially preparing to protect this Morgrem, essentially, or are we going to see an evolution? Now, putting 2 energy onto the Morgrem is thinking about it. Just going to put the 1, I think I like this just a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe even going for the Corkscrew Punch, but then 2 energies on that Morgrem just makes it so enticing for Vance to use Scream Tail and snipe it. You know, getting rid of 2 energies and a Morgrem, it's like all you really want. I mean, it's hard to knock out those Grimsnarls early, and those have 2 energies, so it's a really high value knockout, and Vance would have definitely gone for it. May still go for it even with just the 1 energy, but then has to choose between that Monkey Dory and the Morgrem.
And it is actually going to put Frostlass into play, so we are seeing a switch up from this first game. So here we go, retreat into Grimsnarl. Also avoiding potentially putting another Monkey Dory into play. I believe there is a bench space, and now we'll put that Monkey Dory down. So it's starting to make sense here, Piper, on how Steven is adjusting into the second game. There is that Shadow Bullet taking the KO, 3 damage counters onto Ralts, and it's Steven putting the aggression on again here in the second game.
Yeah, and Steven knows that this Kirlia is prized because Vance would have evolved one of the Ralts into Kirlia, and then evolutioned it into the Gardevoir last turn. So just pressuring that Ralts, threatening a double KO later on the Gardevoir and a Ralts, meaning Vance has to find Rare Candy Gardevoir, Bravery Charm, or bench a 3rd Ralts if he wants to play around that, all of which don't feel great. But here, starting off with an Earthen Vessel Waste Psychic Energy, the best target you can discard off of it.
I'm going to miss this combo so much.
Yeah.
Don't get me nostalgic yet. We're just on our first round of the stream. Earthen Vessel, I love you, my friend. You will be missed. But for now, these players will be using it for full effect, searching through the deck, seeing some energy cards to be put to the hand. The question here for Vance, is there a Monkey Dory out? And with Double Psychic being grabbed, I'm not sure there is quite yet. Could signal an Ultra Ball in hand. And wow, Vance is actually sitting on a really good combo of cards here. Dark Energy, Ultra Ball, Iono, Gardevoir EX. So with this hand here, Vance could guarantee the Monkey Dory off of Ultra Ball, play the Iono, and if there's a Nest Ball or an Artisan, could just go in and use Mind Bend, use Scream Tail. Otherwise, Mind Bend is actually not even a bad attack this turn.
Yeah, has to be careful about the Scream Tail though, because with this Frostlass in play, it means that even if it only has 40 damage on it, 1 more Monkey Dory could move 20 to it, and then a Boss's Orders, and Grimsnarl could be knocking out Gardevoir and Scream Tail in the turn, kind of wiping Vance's board of threats, forcing him to find a Candy Gardevoir on the next turn. And it's starting to look a little bit dicey for Vance here. Steven with such a dominant board, Grimsnarl, Morgrem, a Monkey Dory, the Frostlass taking up damage on these Monkey Dories, so that really just opening the plays. And here Vance eyeing up the Secret Box maybe to get something like the Artisan, Countercatcher potentially, countercatching up that Frostlass, and then using Scream Tail to knock out the Monkey Dory means that Steven either has to find the Air Balloon to retreat the Frostlass or give up on attaching to a Monkey Dory and attach the Frostlass to retreat it.
Yeah, this would also protect the Dark Energy as well. You could get a second copy of Monkey Dory down. It's even thinking about grabbing Rare Candy instead. It's going to guarantee a Lily for the following turn. I like that. It is tough in spots like this to kind of figure out or divulge which is better than what. I think with the bench being full in this case, it may not be terrible to just use Mind Bend. The fear being if you KO this Morgrem on the bench, your opponent could just go all in onto this active and target down your Monkey Dories and have 3 monkeys of their own thanks to Frostlass.
For sure. So Vance here maybe just going for that Monkey Dory and not getting the Countercatcher, just instead prioritizing that either one or the other of the Curly and Gardevoir survive, maybe even both if Steven is unable to find the boss. Just giving them as much HP as possible. Has to be a little careful with the damage on the Curlia now, though, from the Psychic Embrace. And yeah, here's the Scream Tail.
Yeah, there still is the Ultra Ball. The question now, what will we see discarded? Probably one of these Bravery Charms. Does get rid of the Lily. So that card off of Secret Box, going to the discard pile, and just keeping in hand essentially the perfect cards. Rare Candy Gardevoir, Dark Energy, Iona for next turn, and the Bravery Charm to protect. So we really see how Secret Box just allows you to put together these crazy combinations of plays where you're just keeping perfect resource counts and maximizing. Maximizing your odds and maximizing efficiency is so valuable in the Pokemon TCG.
Yeah, and Vance here, discarding cards off Earthen Vessel, Secret Box, and Ultra Ball, was able to not discard anything too impactful for this game, which always feels great. I mean, there's a lot of discarding, and sometimes you just have really bad cards you have to discard. And here, Vance is actually starting to get into a much better spot than he was last turn. But now that Secret Box, which we saw really important at the end of the game for Vance to make a combo, now is not an option.
So we'll see what he decides to go after. Will it be the Monkey Dory or will it be the Morgrim Piper?
Yeah, I think Vance here is thinking which one is better. He has the ability to knock out both with the Adrenabrain.
I would say because of Frostlass being in play, it's probably slightly better to go after Monkey Dory with Dark here and just forego the the Mind Bend Confusion. Your opponent hasn't showed you Air Balloon yet. They've already got that option of retreating and evolving next turn, so I think I like this line just a little bit better. Especially with the Bravery Charm on the active, means it's very unlikely your opponent's going to be able to KO your Screamtail and your Gardevoir EX this turn.
Yeah, one thing to note, though, Vance did discard that second Bravery Charm, so this is his last Bravery Charm for the game, which is a little bit scary. Now just thinking where he wants to put the damage, maybe deciding to switch to a Morgrim KO, or maybe just trying to make sure he doesn't have to put Gardevoir into play next.
It is a bit awkward, and a small thing to note here, I would have really loved to see the 2 damage counters be moved off Kirlia, since there is still always the threat that your opponent has an energy switch in their deck, which would allow them to double Adrenabrain and KO your Kirlia. It's not going to come up in this match, though, as there is no energy switch in the list for Steven, but you've always got to be thinking about sneaky ways this Grimsnarl deck can get in and apply pressure.
Yeah, some people are playing the energy switch in their list. It is a little awkward to find. I keep mentioning time and time again, Grimsnarl doesn't have an engine at the end of the day, so it's really hard to find these one-of techs. But here, Steven looks to have every supporter available in hand besides the Professor's Research. Yeah, Iono, Arven, and Lily's Determination, so gonna decide what is the best supporter to use. I mean, your opponent went Secret Box for Lily's and then Ultra Balled it away, so has a really strong hand, you can assume. Maybe eyeing up that Iono, since Lily's is only giving him 6 cards here.
Yeah, it would just be 2 cards for Vance, so you're essentially helping him out if you play an Iono in a sense. We'll have to see what he decides to go for. Just confirming the ticks are correct with the Frostlass's Freezing Shroud ability. There is that Air Balloon down to the active, so now this Monkey Dory play is going to be a lot less threatening. So Vance may be breathing a sigh of relief, thinking, hey, you know, if I had gone in with Monkey Dory, my opponent would have just had an immediate response. We'll put that on the active and play that Lily's Determination to shuffle through, cycle through the hand. We see this time and time again in Pokemon.
Yeah, and notably here, though, Steven, I believe, has 2 Dark Energies in the discard and 3 in play, and still 2 in the prizes. So it's going to be really awkward to try to find a Dark Energy for the Monkey Dory, maybe having to use a Night Stretcher, which could be a bit annoying, as that second Morgrim is prized. But with the Rare Candy, shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah, most likely not going to see 2 Grimsnarl come into play, or excuse me, 3 Grimsnarl come into play this matchup. Did find Secret Box and the Night Stretcher. And immediately, Steven is just thinking of playing the Secret Box. What could he possibly be looking to grab this turn?
Now, already using a supporter, can't get boss's orders. They're even on prize cards, so no countercatcher. So maybe just trying to disrupt Vance, get rid of that Artisan from play as it gets Monkey Dories, Frillish. If Super Odd is the recovery choice he has to have, it can't get the Screamtail immediately again. The Bravery Charm could be big on either a Monkey Dory to force more damage onto the Screamtail or on the Buddy to prevent it from being taken out by a Adrenabrain.
Yeah, so discarding Iono to grab an Iono does already have Night Stretcher in hand, so basically free rolling which card to grab as the item for choice. It will be the Pokepad being played. We'll find Monkey Dory number 2, as one is in the discard pile already. So Monkey Dory comes down into play, using that Spike Myth's Gym to find another Grimsnarl EX. We'll put that into play as well, so here we go. Grimsnarl EX Punk Up ability powering itself up. Not to see which he wants to keep active. I'm sure we'll see the Air Balloon stay in the active spot, and where these 2 damage counters will be moved off of this turn.
Yeah, I think they're going to be moved off the active or the, well, obviously one of the 2, but trying to make it harder that Vance has to commit both these Adrenabrains to the active to get a Mega Diancie knockout, assuming that he finds another Monkey Dory. And it's pretty close, though, because you do want to make sure that Monkey Dory is safe, especially with that Bravery Charm. So could opt to heal there, just try to make it very hard for Vance to get ahead in the Monkey Dory war. We'll see what he
using that
decides
onto
to do.
Badoo. Is going to go on Monkey Dory instead. So a bit of protection strategy, and it's going to be off the Monkey Dory itself.
Yeah, I mean, with the Screamtail having that second Bravery Charm from Vance, it means that once it's knocked out, if it comes back down and wants to knock out that Monkey Dory, it has to have 80 damage on it, which means it's going to get knocked out from Shadow Bullet or Adrenabrain. A lot of different ways for it to get taken out, and that's just pretty annoying for Vance to have to deal with. It's going to kind of dissuade him from using that Screamtail as aggressively.
Yeah, and I like this as well. The Freezing Shroud's starting to tick up on Monkey Dory, and this Curlia is now being pressured to be knocked out next turn with a Shadow Bullet. So we'll have to see if Vance can find another Dark Energy this turn. That would be a huge grab. Is only going to see 5 cards, no Pheasantipity down, and not too many energies in play either. No real great attack to use besides Mind Bend this turn. So here we go, big 5 cards here for Vance. Up a game, 10 minutes on the clock. Does find almost as best of a combo as you can here. Night Stretcher plus Earthen Vessel and a Dark Energy in hand. The big issue now, though, with that Bravery Charm on the Monkey Dory, is there a way to take a KO while making sure your Screamtail is not KO'd back by an Adrenabrain?
Yeah, it may be able to get out of range being KO'd by an Adrenabrain if Vance moves damage off of it to get to like 5, but then it could still get knocked out to the Shadow Bullet. And Vance also has to remember, though, that the Gardevoir and Curlia are both super heavily damaged, so you kind of have to heal that Curlia to prevent Steven from being able to knock out both the Gardevoir and Curlia.
See how Vance wants to go about this. Big find of that Bravery Charm for Steven, so that Secret Box really coming in useful on the previous turn.
Yeah, Bravery Charm just such a powerful card in these Monkey Dory decks. I mean, Vance obviously getting more damage on the Screamtail, but can sometimes just buff up the HP on the Monkey Dories to make them a bit harder to KO. And yeah, moving 6 damage from this Curlia to get it out of range.
Yeah, so it's just going to be going all after the Monkey Dory here. With the Freezing Shroud take, it's actually going to be KO'd going back into Steven's turn. So the math working out perfectly here, and Frostlass kind of biting him in the back a little bit, dealing too much damage. And now all of a sudden, Vance is the one with a commanding Monkey Dory lead, and there's no way to KO both the Screamtail and something else this turn. You could do it if you had Boss's Orders and Monkey, but we already see Steven is just down so many resources.
Yeah.
Dark Energy is running thin, especially after that punk up on the previous turn. We'll find the last the last Monkey Dory out of the deck. And yeah, there's no Dark Energy left, Piper, just the one in hand grabbed off the prize cards.
Yeah, I mean, Steven using that Secret Box last turn got the Bravery Charm, but the Bravery Charm really didn't do much. And if he had saved that Secret Box, could have maybe put together the Boss plus Adrenabrain play this turn and got himself super far ahead. But now could go for a Technical Machine Devolution play if he finds it, as the Gardevoir was rare candied up, so that would get knocked out. And then this Curlia would go back into a Ralts, which means Vance would have to find his second rare candy with Secret Box gone, and draws into it immediately off that research.
Yeah, would have to retreat into the other one. Actually does have the Dark Energy and finds it as the last card here off of the 7. Thanks to that Professor's research, Dark Energy will be played down into Monkey Dory, and now Steven has options. How does he want to approach this turn?
Yeah, can start putting a ton of damage on this Monkey Dory with 30 damage already and pressuring it, but at the same time, Vance still has that Monkey Dory advantage and much easier access to Steven's Monkey Dories through the Screamtail. So we'll see if he goes for that Technical Machine Devolution play or just wants to get rid of the Screamtail. Vance is down a Night Stretcher and that Secret Box, so it won't be too easy to get the Screamtail back out and retreats here.
I think we're going to see it then, Piper. That makes sense. A little bit of hesitation, but you've got to do what you got to do here in the Pokemon TCG. Devolution comes down. We'll have to see if Adrenabrain moves some counters, and I assume we're going to have to see it come onto the Monkey Dory. That would put it up to 70 in between turns. So here we go, Piper. Moving the damage counters off. Could also move it onto Screamtail. It would allow it to snipe for a little bit more, but it would also force Vance to move damage counters off of it so a Pokemon wasn't KO'd. It's instead going to be onto the Curlia. So that Pokemon will not be KO'd after being devolved, but it would threaten the Ralts in the following turn, and here we go. Devolution being used. All these evolution Pokemon going back to the hand, including that Gardevoir. Vance now is in a one-turn clock to find rare candy. Otherwise, he is going to be blown out of the second game.
Yeah, but the Screamtail surviving another turn. Steven still only with one Monkey Dory, probably getting knocked out this turn, and really has just been unable to establish that second Monkey Dory, and is starting to have a lot of damage on his board, these Grimsnarls, both with quite a bit of damage. Means Mega Diancie could be another option in the end of the game. And Vance here, I saw a couple supporter options. We'll see what he goes with.
Yeah, and this damage is slowly starting to build up on the Grimsnarls in the active spot. With Steven being down so many dark energy, we've got to start doing some math, Piper. If this Grimsnarl ticks back 3 times, right, once going into turn, twice going back to Vance, and then one more time going back into Steven's turn, it would actually mean a single Adrenabrain Diancie KO could take the game if there's another Adrenabrain used to KO Budu after this turn. So Vance potentially is threatening game in 2 turns right now.
Yeah, and Steven still has to be wary of his opponent playing Technical Machine Devolution. I mean, Henry Chow played it to top 4 at the Houston Regional Championships. It could be something that comes into play here, one of these Grimsnarls being rare candied up. So could kind of see a reverse there, and Steven could need to play around that.
So Vance playing super safe in the spot, had Iono potentially, but instead is going to just use this Kirlia's evolution right now. Not trying to find that combination that could be a little bit greedy off of 4 cards. Has an energy card in the hand, considering now just where to put that. Does have another Earthen Vessel, but I think is considering just not using it, and is also not going to attach an energy in hopes of maybe finding Monkey Dory Dark off of these 4 cards.
Yeah, going to be a little difficult with 1 Dark left in the deck, and one of those Earthen Vessels going to the bottom, and 1 or 2 in the discard already, but here finds the Pheasant. Nest Ball and Dark Energy.
Difficult, Piper. What are we talking about? This is a world champ difference right here. Nest Ball,
too strong.
Nest Ball, Plot Armor combined together finds an absolutely incredible combination, and now even thinking about grabbing another Ralts instead, so it's not clear cut here if Monkey Dory will be found, and it actually won't. It just wants to play super safe to make sure that this Psychic Embrace ability is on the following turn. So while it's not another Monkey Dark, it is the smarter play here, it seems, for Vance.
For sure, and I mean, Vance has the Pheasantipede in hand to start drawing cards for next turn if he wants. I think I saw an Arven as well, which is either the Rare Candy or the Gardevoir, so maybe not looking to use the Pheasantipede, though. Already using the Adrenabrains onto that Monkey Dory. Definitely going to Screamtail it at some point this turn, but still has 1 more Adrenabrain to use and decide where he wants to put it. Definitely going to keep that Budu alive for a few more turns. It's just wasting a bench space, and Vance doesn't want to give Steven Counter Catcher, so may go on to the other Monkey Dory to start setting that up for Adrenabrains to knock it out, and maybe take a 3-prize turn with a 3rd Monkey Dory on the Budu, the Monkey Dory, and maybe another Screamtail on the Frostlass.
Yeah, even on one of these Grimsnarl is not terrible.
Yeah.
You open up Counter Catcher and potentially can take a KO there. I think I actually like that maybe a little bit more in this spot.
Yeah, I can knock out the Buddy with an Adrenabrain and then use Mega Diancie to knock out the Grimsnarl on the following turn. So a lot of options here.
So instead, going to just put this guy up to 4. We'll tick again to go to 5 at the end of the turn. And there it is, Roaring Scream, the MVP so far for Vance in this game. Will push him to tie things up at 3 prize cards. Freezing Shroud ticking all these Pokemon in play. And another big turn here for Steven. Can he find a KO onto both of these Pokemon here? Has Dark Energy Boss's Orders, Piper? Is now the time to strike?
Knocking out this Kirlia and the Screamtail means that Vance has to find that Rare Candy Gardevoir, which he was unable to do last turn, or wasn't confident in being able to do last turn, evolving the Kirlia quickly, especially with 1 Rare Candy down. Steven may just go for that, knock out the threat and the Gardevoir chance. And then Vance has to find Rare Candy, Gardevoir, and Mega Diancie to be able to close out this game, which is not easy with such few cards in hand.
Would be difficult. It would mean Steven would be close to being out of Boss's Orders, but with there being nothing else better to do, it seems like this is the route in this case. So here we go. Boss's Orders onto Kirlia, bringing it into the active spot. We'll see the Adrenabrain move 3 damage counters onto this Screamtail, excuse me. I have to wonder, you've got to be careful about the damage counters on your active Grimsnarl in a spot like this. Is not going to be wary, however. We'll see the damage counters moved. And now, all of a sudden, there is a world where if Vance can find the proper combination of cards, he could win the game on this turn.
Yeah, and it looks like it's just Rare Candy, Gardevoir, and Mega Diancie. Yep. This Grimsnarl at 50 already means 1 Adrenabrain there. That's at 80. Mega Diancie doing 240 will knock it out. And then another Adrenabrain, 30 onto the Budu, will give Vance a prize. And if Vance has the rare candy plus Gardevoir, he knows there is an Ultra Ball prize, so could take the Budu prize early and try to find it off that. But has the Pheasantipity and Arven, a lot of pieces already.
Yeah, and Steven being at 1 prize card, playing the boss's orders, Vance can't necessarily lose the game, even if he just promotes Diancie this turn.
Yeah.
It won't be KO'd to a Shadow Bullet, and as long as there's not another Monkey Dory with a Dark Energy that comes down, will mean that these Monkey Dory are probably just safe on the bench. So here we go here. Big turn for Vance. Can he find the pieces necessary to close this game out?
Yeah, benching the Pheasantipity here. Has the Arven for any piece he needs. So just trying to find 2 more of those. Counting the deck. Maybe remembering that it's ordered from an Iono and considering using the Spike Myth Gym first to just shuffle here.
Yeah, there was no rare candy in that hand before the Iono, so he's going to just try and use these 3. I think there's a Night Stretcher in the hand, so let's see here. Big 3 cards. What does he find? Finds Gardevoir EX. Arven. It's close. It's really close, but I think Vance needed to find a Nest Ball or a rare candy instead.
Yeah, just short here. Could have maybe used the Lily's Determination first and then flip the script to see 9 new cards and hope to find it, but I think that was what Vance was counting the deck for. So here, just deciding what to do. Maybe, like you said, just having to retreat into that Mega Diancie and stall for a turn.
No counter catcher being able to be used, and if you just heal damage off the monkeys, one of them would have 10, it would tick to 20, it would then go to 30, which would then mean that if you have another Monkey Dory plus a Dark Energy, you would actually be able to KO the monkey on the bench with that Shadow Bullet damage.
Yeah, the Frostlass really showing that it kind of hurt Steven earlier in the game, but now that damage is really proving to be impactful and was really different from last game where Steven just didn't have that damage to use the Monkey Dories with. So Vance here just using Spike Myth to kind of evaluate what he wants to do. Use Arven, use Lilies, Iono, whatever supporter he chooses.
Yeah, there is a world where you spin the wheel here. There is, I believe, another rare candy available. So we're going to see Earthen Vessel be used to start. It's just kind of thinking about what pieces can be thinned. Dark Energy, the supporter, it will be Turo. I think Vance has enough information that there's probably not a Yveltal in the deck for Steven here.
Yeah, and if Steven is using Yveltal, I mean, Vance is probably losing anyway. I mean, if the Mega Diancie's in the active, Yveltal's not really doing anything to it.
See the attachment for turn to the active.
Yeah, just thinning as many cards out as possible.
Can bench the Frillish here. There's really not a need for a third Monkey Dory. And here we go. We are full spinning the wheel. Pheasantipity has already been used, and I think there's only 1 rare candy in the deck. So if Vance can find a combination of rare candy Gardevoir plus Mega Diancie, he will have all the pieces needed to close out this game.
Yeah, and could maybe stall it with the Mega Diancie, but unlikely, not disrupting Steven's hand. It's going to be hard to find, but sometimes Gardevoir hits it.
Go 2 out of the 3 pieces, but importantly, does find the Mega Diancie and does find Counter Catcher as well. And that's actually a really big piece here to bring up this Frostlass to make sure that a Shadow Bullet plus a second Adrenabrain can't be used. And we've got to keep note here that Vance has only played 1 of these Counter Catcher. With there being 2 in the deck, it means that Vance can re-gust up one of these Grimsnarl EX the following turn to take a KO on it.
Yeah, so while Vance didn't draw game this turn, was able to get to a spot where he's probably not losing on the next turn unless Steven has some card that he hasn't considered, like Energy Switch. But there's a lot of Monkey Doors in this card, I believe 3, and a Night Stretcher or 2 already, so a lot of resources gone. It's going to be really hard for Steven to make a play here. I mean, 100 damage on this Monkey Dory.
Yeah.
A lot of pressure here, and Vance has found a way to survive another turn.
Oh, but look at this! Dark Energy boss orders here for Steven. Wow! What a combination! After all that work for Vance, fell just short, and Steven snatches the game away and forces a game 3 with little time remaining.
Yeah, I think it's a tie now. I think we hit time that round.
Right.
But
wow.
Yeah, Grimsnarl just sometimes has the boss's orders to close out the game. That's what the matchup comes down to a lot of the times. Does Grimsnarl draw the boss? And in that game, Steven had it.
Vance, just on the edge of victory, was unable to find the pieces needed, falls short, and this match will end in a tie. But wow, what a back and forth game 2 that was.
Yeah, I mean, Steven adjusted from last game, going for that Frostlass to get damage on his board, but at the same time, Vance kept knocking out those Monkey Dories with Scream Tail, and he wasn't really ever able to get 2. but with a couple key gusts here and there, was able to just win the game off that, knocking out the big Gardevoir, and Vance wasn't able to find the rare candy Gardevoir response ever.
And it really came down to that last turn as we kind of build up to that, looking through how this game played out. It was sort of, a strong start for Vance in both games, but Steven really responded a lot better in this second game. Had the Monkey Dories down, had early Grimsnarl pressure, and Screamtail really got in here over on Vance's side.
Yeah, Screamtail, just the best attacker for Gardevoir. It's always been in the deck ever since it came out, honestly.
Yep.
And I mean, Drifloon's been in and out, but Screamtail really just the star of the show. And knocking out those Monkey Dories means Steven never really had a good response to Vance, because Vance was not leaving damage on the board, and eventually was able to close out with triple Monkey Dory and the Mega DNC to knock out this Grimsnarl in game 1. And heading into game 2, we saw Steven kind of adjust to the Frosthouse game plan, because, like I mentioned, no damage on the board here means not much to do, and just scooping it up.
Yeah, this early pressure was the big key here for Steven, right? Had the Morgrams down into play, didn't have to worry that much about, rare candy, just use that one early on. This Bravery Charm really was impactful, but it really came down to this turn right here. Devolution KO'd the KO'd the Gardevoir, and forced Vance to put just Kirlia into play this turn. Steven was able to boss it down the following turn and force Vance into a spot where he needed to find rare candy Gardevoir. Couldn't do that, and top deck the boss's orders to close out the game. You've got to imagine that if Vance had just another turn available there, would have been able to re-gust up a Pokemon there with another counter catcher and then use that Mega DNC to take a KO and win this set. But that's what it comes down to. One turn can be all the difference here in the Pokemon TCG.
Yeah, I mean, Vance kind of had a rough last few turns there, having to evolve into Kirlia, not having the rare candy Gardevoir. Then the next turn, also not having the rare candy Gardevoir, not really able to put anything together. And then Steven was just able to draw what he needed and close out that game there.
Well, I wouldn't call it an old-time classic, but since NAIC last year, this is a matchup we've seen in and out. Let's bring Chip in and have a little bit of a discussion about what we just saw. Not an old-time classic again, but